الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أما بعد, respected viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this new lesson of the explanation of the book of Salat. In today's lesson, we will cover the topic of Sunan of Salat. So let's first define what are Sunan of Salat. The word Sunan is the plural of Sunnah. And when we say Sunan al-Salat, we refer to the words and actions which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did in his Salat. In other words, Sunan al-Salat are the recommended things in Salat. They are not obligatory on the person to do, but rather recommended. If a person does not do a Sunnah in a Salat due to forgetfulness or ignorance, his Salat is correct. So he does not have to make sujood al-sahw, or the prostration of forgetfulness, to compensate or to fix his salat. Why? Because these are recommended things in salat. They are not obligatory upon the person to do. The sunan of salat are divided into two major parts. We have sunan qawliya, verbal sunan, and we have sunan fi'liya, practical sunan. There are so many verbal and practical sunan in salat, and in today's lesson we will cover the most common ones. Let's first start with the verbal sunan. Among the verbal sunan is dua ul-istiftah, the opening dua. There are so many opening dua in a salat, and the most common one is سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وتبارك اسمك وتعالى جدك ولا إله غيرك. Now, when should you say dua al-istiftah? You should say dua al-istiftah right after takbirat al-ihram and before reciting al-fatiha in the first rak'ah. The next verbal sunnah is al-isti'adatu wal-basmala, meaning to say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. You say this before you recite al-Fatiha. You should say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم in the first rak'ah. And then from the second rak'ah and up, you should only say بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم and recite al-Fatiha. Should you say بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم loudly or silently? There are two major opinions about this matter, but the most correct is to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim silently, and Allah knows best. The next verbal sunnah is to say Ameen loudly when reciting al-Fatiha loudly. It is a sunnah to say Ameen loudly when you pray behind an imam who recites al-Fatiha loudly, or when you pray on your own and you recite al-Fatiha loudly. Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhu said, when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam would recite غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين, he would say Ameen until the people in the first row would hear him. In another narration it says until the mosque would earth shake with their voices. The next verbal sunnah is to recite verses from Al-Quran after Al-Fatiha. It is a sunnah to recite verses from Al-Quran after Al-Fatiha in the first and the second rak'ah. The third and the fourth rak'ah you should only recite Al-Fatiha. And Al-Fatiha is a rukn, is a pillar of a salat, as we learned from previous lessons, and it has to be recited in every rak'ah. But reciting verses from Al-Quran after Al-Fatiha is not a pillar, and it is not an obligation of a salat. It is only a sunnah, a recommended thing that you should do in a salat. The next verbal sunnah is to say more than one tasbihah in ruku' and more than one tasbihah in sujood, meaning to say more than one tasbihah when you bow and to say more than one tasbihah when you prostrate. It is permissible to say tasbih in ruku' or sujood once, twice, or three times, or even more if you wish. The minimum number of tasbih in ruku' or sujood is one. Why? Because it is a wajib, it is obligatory, as we learned from the previous lesson. And the minimum number of perfection is to say tasbih 3 times. Meaning you say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim 3 times in ruku'. And you say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la 3 times in sujood. That's the minimum number of perfection. Can you say more than 3 tasbihat? The answer is yes. Anas ibn Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, said, I never prayed behind someone whose salat is similar to that of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam than this young man. And he pointed to Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. May Allah have mercy on him. They guessed that Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, may Allah have mercy on him, used to say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim in ruku' 10 times. And he used to say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la in sujood 10 times. And therefore, it is permissible to say more than 3 times tasbih in ruku' and sujood. Let's go now to the practical sunan. And the first sunnah that we are going to cover is to place the right hand over the left hand over the chest when praying. It is a sunnah to put the right hand on top of the left hand on the chest in a salat. Wa'il ibn Hujr, may Allah be pleased with him, said, I prayed with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he placed the right hand on top of his left hand on top of his chest in prayer. The next sunnah is raising hands in salat. You should raise your hands in salat in 4 places. The first place is when you say Takbirat al-Ihram. When you start your salat, you say Allahu Akbar, raising both hands. The second place when you raise your hands in salat is when you are about to bow. When you are about to bow, or when you are ready to bow, you should raise both hands saying Allahu Akbar. Then you bow. The third place when you should raise your hands is when you stand up from ruku'. So when you say Sami Allahu liman hamidah Rabbana wa lakal hamd, you should raise both hands. And you should do this in every rak'ah of a salat. So every time you bow, you say Allahu Akbar, raising both hands, and you bow. Every time you stand up from bowing, you say Sami Allahu liman hamidah Rabbana wa lakal hamd, and you raise both hands at the same time. Now there is a fourth place where you should raise your hands, and that is when you stand up from the first tashahhud. So when you stand up from the first tashahhud to start the third rak'ah, you should say Allahu Akbar, raising both hands. And that's the fourth spot. The next practical sunnah deals with the way we sit in a salat. There are 2 ways of sitting in a salat. The first way is called al-iftirash, and the second way is called at-tawarruk. The iftirash is laying the left foot on the ground while sitting on it and having the right foot upright towards the qibla, as you can see from this picture. When should you sit in iftirash? You should sit in iftirash between the 2 prostrations, and you should sit in iftirash in the first tashahhud of salat. Now, if you cannot sit in iftirash for any reason, whether you are sick or old or any other reasons, it is fine. It is permissible. It is not obligatory to sit in iftirash, but it is a sunnah. And if you can't sit in iftirash, the salat is correct. The second way to sit in salat, or the other way to sit in salat, is at-tawarruk. And at-tawarruk is quite different from the iftirash, as you can see from this picture. You should sit in at-tawarruk in the last tashahhud of salat. And here we are talking about a salat that has more than 2 rak'ah. For example, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, or Isha. The last tashahhud of a salat, you should sit in at-tawarruk, but not the first tashahhud of a salat. The first tashahhud, as we said, you sit in iftirash. What if the salat has only 2 rak'ah, like al-fajr? Should you sit in tawarruk or iftirash? The answer, you should sit in iftirash. At-tawarruk is for the last tashahhud of a salat that has more than 2 rak'ah. And the same rule applies here. If a person cannot sit in at-tawarruk for any reason, then there is no harm and his salat is correct. And with this we come to the end of this lesson. I ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make us among those who listen to the word and follow the best of it. I thank you for watching. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.